Hey guys, this is Ernesto and welcome back to yet another video. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm having a wonderful day. So today we're going to talk about my first impressions of the Sony A7 III and why I hated this camera. So a couple of quick disclaimers. This video is not sponsored by anyone. I purchased the Sony A7 III with my own money. I'm a Canon shooter for over 7 years and I have no plans of switching from Canon to Sony. My intention with this particular camera is just basically to use both my Canon and my Sony. But since I purchased the Sony, what I'm planning to do is basically utilize the Sony a lot more in upcoming videos that you're going to be seeing on this channel. So yes, I'm not switching. So you may be asking yourself, why is it that I hated this camera when everyone else loved this camera? I pride myself in knowing 4 things when it comes to cameras. And those 4 things basically allow me to create an image with any camera that I pick up. And the 4 things that I pride myself in knowing is basically the aperture, shutter, ISO, and white balance. As long as I know those 4 things when it comes to a camera, I can basically shoot any camera, pick it up, and I'm good to go. However, with the Sony, I quickly realized those 4 things were just not enough to operate this camera. Straight out of the box, this is not a camera that you can simply pick up and take for a spin. What I have found is that I had to customize a few settings on this camera in order for it to operate properly. One major item that I changed, thanks to my friend and fellow photographer James, who showed it to me, was changing the autofocus to continuous autofocus, which made the world of difference on this camera. Which brings me to why I hated this camera. Taking this camera out for my very first photo shoot with it straight out of the box, prior to changing the autofocus to continuous focus, I was getting maybe 1 out of 5 images in focus, which you could imagine was a very, very frustrating experience for me. So on that photo shoot, what I decided to do was eventually just started to use manual focus, because manual focus just seems to work better, and my percentages of in-focus shot increase versus just using the autofocus on the camera. So on this photo shoot, I was using the Metabones Adapter with my Canon lens, which was the Canon 85 1.2 lens. And I really thought it was the Metabones Adapter that was causing the autofocus issues. But as I stated before, it turned out to be just changing the autofocus to continuous autofocus resolved the problem. So James, thank you very much for showing me this one small change that I could make on this camera to make my experience a little bit better. So if you guys are having the same problem with this camera, at least straight out of the box, this is one thing you could probably try to change to see if it resolved the problem for you. So what surprised me about this camera? Being a Canon shooter, I guess I was spoiled. Every camera I purchased, I had a charger included. However, when I received this Sony camera, I was literally looking for a battery charger, and I was about to call Adorama and tell them the charger was missing. But will.i.am _Asante Photography reached out to me on IG, and he set me straight by making me aware that no charger was included with this camera. He also helped me with how to get the camera charged, which was great. Thank you, will.i.am. I appreciate it very much. Speaking of chargers, I was actually very pleased with the battery life on this camera. I traveled to New York on a Saturday and I didn't leave until about Wednesday. And I didn't charge this camera once, and it lasted for that entire time. Now granted, it was just casual shooting that I was doing in New York. It wasn't basically getting up from, you know, let's say 7 in the morning to like 6 in the evening shooting this camera nonstop. It wasn't like that. It was just casual shooting. But I was pleasantly surprised that this battery lasted this long. As a Canon shooter, I guess I was also spoiled by the fact that the battery life on these cameras lasts for a very long time, and I literally just put my camera in my bag and I could just shoot like maybe 2 or 3 shoots maybe on one battery. So the fact that I could utilize this Sony camera on standby for such a long time without actually charging the battery, for me, was excellent. One item that really surprised me with this particular camera is the size and the weight of this camera. When I traveled to New York, I was able to put this camera in my backpack, which was great because I didn't have to carry my regular camera bag that I would normally carry with my Canon gear. That said, the size is a plus and minus, and I'll get into that. What didn't surprise me about this camera? This camera still felt like a toy in my hands. The A7 line of cameras, the body style is still something that feels a little bit weird to me. My pinky finger simply just hangs off the bottom of the camera, and my thumb just towers above the top of the position of the camera, which sometimes forces me to use 2 hands because when I adjust my hands to reach the buttons, I feel like I will drop the camera. These things didn't surprise me because I was expecting that. However, to be fair to the Sony A7 line, I have only ever held it in a camera store, so I never actually used it. Now that I own an A7 III, which is a body style that I really didn't enjoy in the camera store, my hope is that my first impression of this body style will fade in time, and if it don't, then I know that this body style is really a problem. The Metabones Adapter version 5. Now, this has nothing to do with the camera, but I wanted to touch on it just a little. So when I first got this camera, I didn't have any Sony lens. The only lens that I had was my Canon lens. So the only way that I could use this camera was to use the Metabones Adapter. Now, to be clear, the Metabones Adapter version 5 worked really well. That was not the problem. The problem with the Metabones Adapter was not the functionality, like I said. The problem with the Metabones Adapter was the physical aspect of it. It was really difficult to use that Metabones Adapter. Every time I positioned my hands to create an image, it was so difficult to hold the camera and also put my fingers into that groove where the Metabones Adapter was, because the cuts on that Metabones Adapter was so sharp that it just made my fingers really uncomfortable. So it was very difficult to create images with this specific Metabones Adapter. This experience forced me to get 2 native lenses for the Sony, the 35 1.4 and the 55 1.8. Both are 2 great lenses, and I will get into the quality of those lenses on future videos. So in conclusion, my first impression with this camera was very good. The hype around this camera, I would say it was all real. The camera does function really well, especially if you make some adjustments to the camera before you actually use it, as in my case. So guys, look forward to a lot more videos on this channel with the Sony A7 III as I put it through its paces. Coming from a Canon shooter, I want to see how this camera performs versus my Canon camera, which is the 5D Mark III. So I just want to see how those two cameras perform, and also against my 6D Mark II, which is what I'm recording on right now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see how these two go head to head as far as some tests and comparison and some real world examples. So stay tuned for that. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Put some comments down below. Let me know what you think. Share this video with your friends and family if you think it will be helpful to them. And guys, if you got this far in this video and you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.